Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE and compare it against the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE and see which particular Samsung phone is the better one for you. Now, I definitely do think the S23 FE is the better phone in general over the S20 FE, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the S20 FE is a horrible device. I think that device in some ways is still kind of worth buying, but I would probably argue that if you're buying a phone right now, the S23 FE is probably going to be the better one. But like I said, you don't have to go for the FE. You can go for the standard S23 or the standard S22 and still get a much better device than these things and genuinely feel like you're not even paying that much more than these particular devices. So if you want to pick up some phones I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description. You can get that from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these devices, the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE on the front has a 6.5-inch Super AMOLED display. And it's a pretty good looking device, it's a pretty good looking panel, and I've always felt like this was a pretty good looking phone for the most part. It's a good sized panel, Super AMOLED, 120Hz as well, and it's a hole punch display too. And the weird thing is, in my opinion, I kind of do feel like that the front of the S20 FE looks better in some ways than the S20 FE or S23 FE. So I'm not really even too sure what that's supposed to mean to me. Like, I genuinely do feel like, in a way, Samsung kind of made the S23 FE look more like their Galaxy A series. I have no idea why they ended up doing that, but I will probably tell you that for the most part, the S20 FE's display, with it being a hole punch display, with it having 120Hz, very good display, and I feel like for the most part, it's a decent display when it comes down to it. With the S23 FE on the front, you're getting a little bit of a different panel, so it's 6.4 inches still, is dynamic AMOLED, and it's 120Hz. I will tell you, the panel itself on the S23 FE is better, so I feel like that is a better panel overall, but the thing that I kind of have, and the problem that I kind of have with this specific phone, is that it is kind of in this weird situation where it's like, it has a little bit more bezel than I would probably like. To give you some perspective, the S20 FE from 2020 has 84.8 screen to body ratio. The S23 FE has 83.2% screen to body ratio and has a smaller screen. So it's like you're getting a smaller screen and you're getting more bezel. Not a fan of it. I feel like Samsung could have done a little bit of a better job here. But again, what are you going to do? There's not much we can do as of this point. So that kind of covers it up from that perspective. They both have USB Type-C ports. Another thing though, the S20 FE does actually have a microSD card slot. So this is something that's very cool. Having a microSD card slot is very, very awesome. And you're kind of missing that out on the standard S23 FE. So keep that in mind. Maybe there'll be another variant that has it, but as of right now, that's not quite the case. So that kind of covers it up there as well. On the back side, a little bit of a different setup here too. So we're getting a frosted plastic back on the back of the S20 FE, where the Galaxy S23 FE has a standard glass back. A little bit of a difference here as well. From everything that I've seen, from everything I've kind of noticed, you are definitely getting overall the better performing feeling phone for the most part on the S23 FE. It's a much better feeling phone, and having that glass back is definitely going to be giving you a better experience than something like the S20 FE's plastic back. But I still say the plastic back still feels very good. It doesn't really feel like you're missing out on too much there either. So that's kind of what happens when you're getting these types of devices. So from that perspective, that kind of covers it up on the outside. Now from the camera side of things, the S20 FE and the S23 FE both have triple camera setups. So you're getting a 12 megapixel wide, 8 megapixel telephoto, then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera on the S20 FE. With the S23 FE, you're getting a 50 megapixel wide, 8 megapixel telephoto, then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. So both cameras are good. You're not getting crazy differences between them for the most part, but there is a slight difference. So for one, you're getting 4K at 60 on the front and the back of both of them, which is nice, but you're actually getting 8K capability on the back of the S23 FE. That is very nice. That in and of itself is one of the better features going on for these types of devices. And once again, I love having this type of capability, and that is a very, very cool thing. So if you're wanting the device that basically has the better camera, the S23 FE is definitely going to be the one for you. However, I will tell you, the S20 FE's camera is still very decent, right? I feel like it is almost the same thing as the S20's camera. Not almost the same thing, but there's a lot of overlap. And you're actually getting a very decent camera on the S20 FE for how old this phone is. Once again, it's not a new phone, and it's definitely older, and it's not even as good of a camera as the S20 or whatever, the S21 or whatever those phones are. But I think this is still a very decent camera for what you're getting, and I think that's definitely a pretty big thing to keep in mind there too. So I will tell you, if you're wanting the better camera, it's definitely going to be on the S23 FE, but I feel like the S20 FE's camera is still pretty decent for the most part as well. Now moving on to the actual, kind of the software longevity, this is going to be the biggest difference here. You are going to be getting the longer lasting phone on the S23 FE than on the S20 FE. So if you're wanting the phone that's going to last a longer amount of time, you're going to be getting that on the S23 FE. So that is it. I've always felt like, this is one of the bigger things here. If you're wanting the bigger phone, or if you wanted the longer lasting phone, the S20 FE is going to be the one that's not going to be supported that much longer. So you might as well go for something like the S23 FE from everything that I've known. So that in and of itself, once again, is another very, very big thing to keep in mind. So if I were you, I would just recommend going down that direction and getting a device like the S23 FE over the S20 FE, because that one's not even supported with software that much longer. So that's kind of how to kind of sum it up there. In terms of the performance side of things, the Galaxy S20 FE, which came out in 2020, I have to remind you, has that Snapdragon 865 chipset inside with 6 gigs of RAM on the base model, but it does go up to 8 gigabytes of RAM. Where the Galaxy S23 FE, on the other hand, has that Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset inside with 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, this is another thing to keep in mind here. You are once again going to be getting the better performing phone in every single way on the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE than the S20 FE. That's just what happens. I would really hope that the newest phones have that type of capability that's better. So that's exactly precisely what's happening here. You're going to be getting that phone with much better capability on the S23 FE than the S20 FE. But I'll also tell you, the S20 FE still is a pretty decent performing phone. For a lot of things I've thrown it, for everything that I've ever done with it, it's done a pretty good job. Like, I've always felt like that's a very decent performing phone, and that in and of itself is a very, very important thing. Again, if you're wanting the newest phone that has the latest capability, you can always go for something like the Galaxy S23 or like one of those types of phones. But I will tell you, from everything that I know, you are basically getting a very good performing phone from the S23 FE. Now, the S20 FE is still okay. Like, if you need to go and do some things, it's totally fine. It's not even that big of a deal. It's just the software being kind of unsupported is kind of the issue that I have. But I think the S23 FE is a much better performing phone in every single way. But the S20 FE is still very good. Like, it's kind of like a little bit of a different situation because the S20 FE is substantially older, so we know it's not going to perform as well as the S23 FE. But I will tell you, from everything I know, the S23 FE is a substantially better phone in every single area. So that's just kind of how it's sum of this whole entire comparison. You're definitely getting the overall better phone in every single way on the S23 FE than on the Galaxy S23. There actually isn't any way where I would go ahead and look at something like the S23 FE and be like, oh, this is a worse phone, other than like maybe the bezel around the display, which isn't probably even that bad of a deal for a lot of people. For a majority of people, I think the S23 FE is probably the better phone, and that's kind of the way I'd recommend going down. I think the S20 FE is still a very decent phone for everything you're doing, for everything you're kind of looking at, and I do think for a majority of people, like, you can't really go wrong with that type of phone. But I would definitely recommend going for the S23 FE. It's much better, and it makes a lot more sense to buy a phone like that over buying a phone like an S20, FE like in 2023. So that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.